Question number 13 asks us to find the area and circumference of a circle. So the area and circumference of a circle takes a little bit of explaining to talk about. So first thing that we want to talk about is something called pi. So pi is this interesting number, and it's this number that says anytime you have a circle, no matter how big it is, if it's a perfect circle, the distance around it will always be 3.14 times larger than the distance across it. So if the distance across is just 1, then the distance around is pi times 1. It's 3.14 times 1. If the distance across it was 3, then the distance around would be 3 times pi. Okay, so a general formula we can write is that the circumference, the distance around, is pi times your diameter. Now, sometimes we use the term the radius. The radius goes halfway across. So if your diameter was 3, your radius in this picture would be 1.5. Okay, so the radius goes halfway across. So a different way to write this is 2 times pi times the radius. This is actually the one that you'll see more often. So for circumference, 2 pi r. Okay, area is a little bit more tricky. So one way that we show area of a circle is we'll kind of divide it into a series of little pie slices. And then we'll take those slices and we'll rearrange them like this. Okay. Now, the thinner we make those slices, the more that we cut them up, the smaller we make them, the smaller these little bumps on the top and bottom get. So if you imagine if we had quite a lot of these and we had them all going back and forth, then eventually you start to approach a shape that looks less and less like a parallelogram and more like a rectangle. Okay, so we want to ask, what is the area of that rectangle we're making? Well, the distance along the side right here came from the radius. If you can see that, those slices went in and they made it to the center. So the length of any slice was the radius. Now, we already said that the circumference, the distance all the way around, should be 2 pi r. And if you think about it, half of that circumference was the bumps on the top, half of it was the bumps on the bottom. So the distance wouldn't be all of that 2 pi r, it would just be pi r, half of it. Half of it on top, the other half on bottom. So if we're looking for the area of that circle, we rearrange our circle into what looks quite a lot like a rectangle, and we find the area of that rectangle. Well, pi r times r just becomes pi r squared, and that is the area of a circle. Okay, so we end up with these two equations, the area, which is pi r squared, and the circumference, which is 2 pi r. They're easy to mix up. The way that I would keep them separate is the one that is a two-dimensional thing, an area is two-dimensional, has an exponent of 2. Okay, that's the best way that I keep them separate. So on the circumference that they're looking for, we would take 44, that's our radius, from the center out, and we'd put it in here. So it'd be pi times 44 squared. Sorry, that'd be for the area. For the circumference, it would be 2 times pi times 44. Now, when they're asking these kind of questions, the lawn will be surrounded by tape. Surrounded is talking about the circumference. It's talking about the outside. Fertilizer will be applied to the lawn. So they're going to spread fertilizer on the whole surface of the lawn. Well, that would be the area that we're talking about.